Hello and welcome to Baiju's Exam Prep. Welcome to the big news of the day. The 4th of July marks the death anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, and hence, on this occasion, we are going to talk about the life, teachings, and philosophy of Swami Vivekananda. But before that, let me take you through the knowledge series schedule for the fifth week, and we are going to cover all these important static topics from the 4th of July to the 10th of July through live sessions every day at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So, those who are preparing for this year's mains and as well as for the next year's attempt, do attend these live sessions without fail. And for more regular updates on our initiatives, do subscribe to the channel. Now, coming back to the big news of the day, the 4th of July marks the death anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, who was and still is one of India's most prolific spiritual leaders, who made a tremendous contribution to India's spiritual awakening and as well as to its nationalist movement. As a leading philosopher and thinker of Indian philosophy, he introduced Indian spiritual and philosophical thought to the Western world and helped popularize the teachings of Vedanta in the Western countries. In India, he emerged as an icon of the youth and called for the spiritual and cultural awakening of India, which would even go on to inspire India's freedom struggle against the British. See, Swami Vivekananda was born as Narendra Datta in Calcutta on the 12th of January 1863. He was born to a Bengali family, and his father was a practicing advocate at the Calcutta High Court, and his grandfather was a scholar and even became a monk. And this gave a young Narendra Datta a wide exposure to key values, teachings, and principles. It is said that in his early days, Vivekananda's thinking and personality was largely shaped by his family, and his father's progressive rational attitude, combined with the religious temperament of his mother, had a deep influence on his upbringing. He would go on to study at Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar's institution, and at a very young age, he would find interest in spirituality and was often found meditating in front of deities. He would further expand his horizons of knowledge at the Presidency College, and as the Bengal province had emerged as the cultural intellectual hub of India, it allowed Narendra Datta to explore his inclinations, and he became deeply fascinated with Indian philosophy and as well as by wandering ascetics and monks. Right from his school and college days, he would take a deep interest in various subjects, including philosophy, religion, history, the social sciences, art, and literature. He would even go on to learn music and yoga and developed a deep interest in Hindu scriptures in particular, and would go on to master the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, and the Mahabharata, and as well as the Puranas. During his youth, he would regularly participate in physical exercise and sports. And after having gained a hold on Indian philosophy, at the right time he would get exposed to Western logic and Western philosophy, and as well as to European history. It was this combined influence of Indian philosophy and spiritualism, along with Western logic and Western philosophy, that allowed Vivekananda to develop the spirit of universalism. In the 1880s, his spiritual leanings began when he joined Nava Sadan that was set up by Keshav Chandra Sen, and later he would also become a member of the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj, which was one of the factions of the Brahmo Samaj that was set up by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. This gave a young Narendra Datta a tremendous opportunity to interact with the likes of Keshav Chandra Sen and Debendranath Tagore, who were leading a breakaway faction of the Brahmo Samaj. The concepts and principles of Brahmo Samaj, as laid down by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, would go on to shape his initial beliefs, and this led him to denounce polytheism and the caste restrictions, as Brahmo Samaj advocated against blind idol worship and blind faith in multiple gods, and had also taken a stand against the oppressive caste system of Hinduism. This led Narendra Datta to develop a streamlined, rationalized vision, thus strongly inculcating a monotheistic theology that strongly believes in the worship of one universal God. And this led Narendra Datta to develop a more modern reading of ancient Indian scriptures, including the Upanishads and the Vedas. So, definitely, the Brahmo Samaj its leaders, and its teachings had a deep influence on Narendra Datta during his formative years. Later, he would go on to meet Ramakrishna Paramahamsa that would change the course of his life as he moved away from Brahmoism and gained further exposure with Western universalism and Western philosophy, thus allowing him to blend Indian spirituality with Western logic. Based on this, he would go on to provide a modern interpretation of Indian Vedanta and would urge the Indian youth to be aware of India's rich cultural heritage and called for a spiritual awakening of Indians, as the British had crushed the Indian identity by defaming and degrading Indian spiritual and cultural heritage. But Vivekananda's worldly universal views allowed him to move away from the restrictions of Indian philosophy and enabled him to see the flaws as well in India's spiritual and philosophical ecosystem. It was in this phase that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is said to have had a deep influence on the ideological underpinnings of Narendra Datta and encouraged him to develop a Vedanta based worldview rooted in the spirit of universalism. Powered with this knowledge and awakening, Narendra Datta would travel the world, and in the 1890s he would go on to address the World Parliament of Religions and would go on to deliver a stunning speech which not only brought him popularity in the Western countries but also gave him a platform to take Indian Vedanta and philosophy to Western societies. Inspired by his worldly views, he would go on to reject Adhikarivada, which was rooted in Indian culture that had allowed the upper castes, especially the Brahmins, to retain exclusive rights over Indian scriptures. And he would go on to state that all men are capable of receiving knowledge, particularly from Indian scriptures and Vedanta, as he strongly believed that knowledge is universal and not restricted to any elite communities. This is where he rejected the caste based discrimination and would call upon the Indian youth to study Upanishads and Vedas without being bound by the barriers of caste. Later, he even propagated the essence of Hinduism by strongly believing in Adi Shankaracharya's Advaita philosophy, or the school of non dualism that ran counter to Dvaita or dualism philosophy that was founded by Madhvacharya. But Vivekananda refused to see Indian philosophy just from one prism, and he would go on to provide a more modern and universalistic interpretation that would reconcile the essential conflict between Dvaita and Advaita, and thus Vivekananda laid the foundation for the emergence of Neo Vedanta, or the new interpretation of the Vedas. This particular quote by Swami Vivekananda makes it very clear as to what were his views on caste and religion. He stated that each soul is potentially divine, that is, every human is divine, irrespective of their caste or religion, and the goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, external and internal. He urged the youth to do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, in order to be free. He essentially emphasized on the physical, mental, and spiritual awakening of the youth and declared that the whole of religion, all the doctrines, philosophies, dogmas, rituals, books, etc., they're all secondary details, and what is primary is the soul, which is divine. Apart from making this immense contribution to Indian spirituality and universalism, he would even go on to champion Indian nationalism as it became a prominent theme in Vivekananda's thought. He played a key role in promoting Indian nationalist thought in the 19th 20th century, and he exerted the Indian youth to be proud about its rich cultural heritage and strongly backed and supported the Indian national movement. He himself would participate in the freedom struggle and called for Indian independence from British rule. And through his life's work, he took a strong stand against any form of caste based discrimination, untouchability, and as well as discrimination against women. He gave a call for the Indian youth to arise, awake, and to not stop until the goal is reached, and quickly emerged as a tall spiritual leader and philosophical thinker, and also became an inspirational icon for the Indian youth. So, on the occasion of his death anniversary, we pay tribute to this legend, and on this note, we shall conclude the session. So, if you found the initiative to be helpful, do support us by liking the video, and without fail subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.